Welcome to Mechanic. In this video we're going to show you how to troubleshoot the AC system. So if you have an AC that's not blowing cold air, then you're going to find this video helpful, hopefully. So we have a car that has a good AC, so I want to show you what you should be looking at, whether it's pressure, voltages, and a few other things we're going to check with a scan tool. So we need to look at something that works, and then you can compare this with your car. So first thing you gotta start with is make sure that pretty much all AC systems are gonna have a fuse for that AC compressor. Check that. So start with that first, and then the next step is you want to make sure that there's refrigerant in the AC line, so you don't have a leak. So if you hook up a gauge, now if you have the small handheld cans that have the gauge on it, that will show you this, the low side. The low side, when the car engine is turned off, it's actually going to be at 90 or 100%, and that's normal. When the engine kicks in, this low side, it should go down to 30 and 40. It varies based on the outside temperature, but ideally you want to be between 30 and 40. The high side, now you might not have a gauge for the high side. Ideally you want to check the high side as well. When the engine is not running, it's going to be as you can see, around 100. Now if you do run the engine, the high side is going to actually go up, and we'll show you that in a second. You might have one of those gauges. This is going to go on the low pressure port, and again, when you connect this and the car is not running, you should have high pressure like that. So it should have like 100 psi or so. And we're going to start the car, and we're going to look at the gauges. So this first, after you check the fuses, this is the second thing you should check. Make sure that your system is filled with refrigerant. And we'll go to the next step. But let's take a look at what these gauges do when the car starts. So here the engine is running. You can see the low side is starting to drop, and it shouldn't drop much lower than 30. About 35 to 40 is probably going to be where you want to be. You do want to check the outside temperature as well, because that can affect the range, but you can see there. And then on the high side, we're staying at 100. Sometimes technically should go, if you wait a little bit, that should go to about 150 to 200. That would be the ideal range, but that might take a little bit of time to get there. So now if you started the car and these gauges, especially the low pressure side, doesn't drop from high and come to this normal range where it should be, then what that means is the AC compressor is not kicking in. And we're going to go to the next step, and we're going to use a couple of tools. One, we're going to use a multimeter, and we're going to use the Mechanic scanner as well. So on the Mechanic scanner, a lot of these cars, the AC system, if it detects any issues, whether it's a pressure sensor for the AC that's reading low or has open circuit, or if it's lower refrigerant, but that is easy for you to check, and you can see if your system was leaking and then you filled it, what will happen is that if in the AC control module itself there is going to be a fault code, and that fault code can prevent the AC compressor from kicking in. So from engaging, there might be active codes. It's kind of like, for example, like if you had an issue with the airbag system, and the airbag light is just gonna stay on until you go and clear the codes. It's very similar on the AC control unit as well. Now, not all cars, not all codes in the AC system will prevent it, but there's a lot of fault codes, so you don't know. And what you need to do is you need to use a scanner like this that can go into the air control unit. So you have all these different control units in the vehicle. They're kind of broken down into categories. We go to AC control unit, and then what we want to do is we want to read the codes. Okay, so this is going to just run a test. So what this does is runs all the AC flaps and the blower motor and everything. So it does a quick test on that, but you can skip it. You can hit cancel there. So we can just look at the fault codes and see if there's any. So there's no fault code. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go to active tests, and we need to turn on the AC compressor. So here you can control a lot of like vents and so on, but what we're interested in this AC compressor. Press OK, and now you could technically just go and turn on the AC from the dash there, but you don't know if you actually have an issue with the electrical system. So what we have done in this case, we have located the line that goes to the AC compressor. So this is only the positive line, while AC compressors only have one line that goes to it. The negative is just simply grounded. Some of them will have two lines going, so you'll have a black line or a brown one as well, so that will be your negative. In this case we only have one line, and in this case we have the negative just on the ground there, and we have this positive. We haven't really cut the line. We have removed a little bit of insulation on this so we can tap in there, but if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can just reach and unplug the line from the AC compressor, but sometimes that can be a little hard to get to. So we have our voltmeter, and voltmeter we want to put it here to voltage and DC, and you can see it's reading 0.001, so there's no voltage right now. So if we come on our scan tool, now we do have to have the car running, but what we'll do is we are going to switch on the compressor. So I'm going to start the car, and I'll come here and switch on the compressor. We should get at least like 10 volts, 11, 12 volts or so. There might be a little bit of a voltage drop because of these are not ideal, they're not perfect. So as long as you're getting above 10 volts. Now one thing I would say is you do want to check what type of AC compressor is on your vehicle. Some of them will engage and operate at 5 volts, so check that, but majority of AC compressors operate with just one line that sends 10, 11, 12 volts or so when the engine is running. So I'm going to start the car and turn on the AC compressor, and we're going to read the voltage. So right here we switch on the AC compressor by pressing 3 right there. So once we turn this on, you'll see there that says switch on refrigerant compressor or AC compressor is active. You can see pressure, you can see temperature and consumption, current consumption of the AC compressor. It did turn off there. So, and now it's coming back on. Okay, you can see now we're reading 10 volts, 10.5 volts. So the AC compressor, that pressure there on the high side is pretty high. It shouldn't be that high, but you can see what's going on. So I'm going to go shut off the engine now. So one interesting thing is that we actually disconnected this fan, the cooling fan for the engine, so we could record this video. And as you saw, the pressure jumped really high there. So that was an interesting. Now we have reconnected the engine cooling fan. You can see the pressure for the high side is normal between 150 to 200, and then on the low side it's right about 45, which is good. Earlier, just a few seconds ago, you saw that this reached over 450, and then the current went to 0 because the car automatically shut off the AC compressor to prevent any damage, and this went to 0 as well, so that dropped really quick. So it seems like this car needs the cooling fan, the engine cooling fan, to operate properly, to have the AC running properly. Or if you have other issues with the car, that can also prevent your AC. So depending on what it is, like in this case, like engine cooling needs to be fully functional for the AC system to work properly, which makes sense because you don't want to run AC when you have a car that's not cooling. It could overheat. So it's not a bad design when you really think about it. So, but you can turn off the AC compressor right here if you want. So that takes a second, and then we'll send off. But when you look there, you can see the voltage dropping, and so that voltage went back to 0. So one thing I wanted to show you is now that everything is running, it's running well. If you can turn on and off, activate blower motors and a lot of things, the flaps under the dash and so on, the motors on that. But live data is very critical. You have the AC controls, so you have the temperatures, interior temperature, exterior evaporator temperature, and so on, and you have the recommended ranges for some of them. So if it goes higher, then you know that AC compressor is consuming a little bit higher than it should, so it's hitting the upper limit there. That's why it's turning red. Everything else looks good, but you have a lot of live data. Air flaps, rear air conditioner temperature sensors, so all the temperature sensors on the car, ambient sensors, and so on. You can see ambient temperature calculated 31 degrees Celsius, and it's blowing at about 13 in the vents, so that's good. Let's go. You can check lean bus voltages at different AC components and so on. So that's important for troubleshooting. But with these newer cars, you will need at least a manifold gauge so you can check the pressures. This is basically where you would want to be for an ideal situation, about 35 to 40 psi on the low side when the engine is running, and about 150 to 200 for the high side when the engine is running. Once the engine stops running, the low side is going to jump. The pressure builds up on the low side, and it's 80, 90, could be 100, and that's okay, that's normal. The low side might drop a little bit, but then it comes up when you start the engine. Multimeter, so you can check if you have 12 volt coming. A scan tool that can read the AC control units, so ideally all the control units of the car, so that if there is any codes, if there is anything like live sensor data, you can see what's going on, and ideally you can control the AC compressor with the scan tool. The last test that I want to show you is that we're going to check the resistance of that AC compressor. This line is connected there. I have the car turned off, so we're not measuring anything from the car. We want to put our voltmeter into ohms, and it's reading about 18.4 ohms of resistance. So you should get a resistance there. If you get infinity, then if the resistance is too high, the compressor might be faulty. And thank you for watching You Can, where you can be the mechanic.